Hi, everyone. Pastor Galen, lead pastor at Cheyenne Hills Church. Thank you so much for joining us on this podcast. We hope that these podcasts will be a real encouragement to you on your spiritual journey. You can also connect with Cheyenne Hills at CheyenneHills.org. Hope you enjoy the program.
Across the street and around the world, Cheyenne Hills.
Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to the podcast. So glad you're with us. And Nathan, well, welcome back, and glad you're here. Happy New Year. I don't know if have we seen each other since the New Year?
I think we have, but it's been a little while.
It's been a while. I've been gone, and you've been around preaching really all over the world, haven't you?
Well, it's primarily in Wyoming this go around.
The whole world, yeah.
But it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, that's good. I'm glad you're getting those opportunities to preach. And do you like preaching?
You know what? If God ever calls someone to preach, it's like a fire in your bones, like the prophet in the Old Testament.
Yeah, and he said, I've got this message I got to speak, and I understand that. Was that Jeremiah that said that? I
think so.
It was burning in his bones or something.
Yeah.
And and I've been gone for a couple of weeks, just missed one weekend, but it's like, I don't know. I was ready to be back in the pulpit again. So it is kind of a cool thing. Well, there's a lot of things we could do. A lot of things.
Oh my goodness, so much has happened since our last conversation.
There's the whole march with Roe v. Wade. You could give us an update on that. Maybe I'm not sure if we'll get to that one today. But the one that kind of caught my attention is the charter schools. And I was looking. There was a news feed about this pastor in Chicago, and his solution. Okay, so his name's Corey Brooks. Okay, and he's on today is day 67 of his Rooftop Revelations, and he's doing this podcast.
I saw a little chunk of that video, and he's sitting out there in the Chicago cold.
He's freezing,
but he is saying things so good.
Oh man, and he's just solid gold. It's like, man, way to go, brother. He's doing a great job. But one of his solutions, he says he identifies the problems. And his solution is the charter school. Right. One of the things he talked about is because you can get rid of teachers that are, charter schools don't have to take teachers that are not up to par. Okay?
That's right. Right.
And they can also, if kids need correction, they can make some corrections in their lives. And then he talked, I wish we could hear it in his voice and not mine.
What will close the gap is simple. A true and honest and vigorous education. In this light, good public charter schools are the very way forward. We have seen them close the gap in New York City and elsewhere. Success Academy and Eva Moskowitz is just one example. They can fire the bad teachers. They can correct wayward students. They are not bound by ineffective racial injustice issues. The good charter schools are not concerned with meaningless optics, but with educating kids.
That's what you've been pounding the table for a long time.
This is a great new development. That's a great segue into just recently we had the opportunity to have our opening banquet, if you will, to introduce Cheyenne to the Cheyenne Classical Academy. Okay. Which, if people are familiar with Hillsdale College, just a great college out in Michigan, they have something called the 1776 curriculum. And they've done a tremendous job of putting the right kind of ingredients in to give kids the classic kind of education that we need so much. And they use a system called the Trivium, which is logic, grammar, and rhetoric. Okay. But they also include things like Latin. And they feel that Latin is so important to teaching children how to really think, how to properly formulate their phrasing and everything else. And so we were able to introduce what that looks like, and the response was overwhelming. We had an event out at the Metropolitan, and that's just the first of many events. Of course, we want to introduce this across the community, but it was well attended, and the conversation it spawned was wonderful.
I'll bet.
Yeah.
So can you talk just a little bit about the structure? Because I think you mentioned it a long time ago, but there's a different board even set up to make this charter school possible here in Cheyenne.
Right.
Or in all of Wyoming, apparently.
Right. Well, and it took a lot of effort. So Wyoming right now is dead last in the nation when it comes to school education options.
Okay.
We're dead last. 95.1% of our children have no alternative but the public education system. Okay. And as wokeism invades the public education system, there's a lot of concern. We've seen this nationwide. Because of COVID-19, more parents are more aware of what their children are being taught than ever before. And we're actually finding, this is the nature of the suit we sadly had to bring against Laramie County School District number 1 last year, is because of the woke ideology that some have allowed to infiltrate even here in Cheyenne, Wyoming. So we're not immune from these things. And so what we did is we were able to go to the legislature. It was a group effort of a number of different people, and bring some legislation that opened a second authorizer. Before that, you actually had to go to the local school board. So the chickens had to go to the fox in charge of the hen house to ask if they could be safe.
Right.
And so that's the reason why there were only 5 in the entire state of Wyoming. And so what we were able to do is open up a second authorizer. In this case, it's the State Loan and Investment Board. It may not always be that particular board, but it did provide a second alternative to allow charter schools to open up.
So you're saying that to start a charter school, they won't have to go through the traditional school board, or
right.
Is that right?
That's exactly
They'll
right.
be able to go to this other board, and they have the authority to start a school here in Cheyenne.
Yeah.
And then they can say, okay, we want this school to meet in that building, and they have the authority to do that.
And that's how it's happened in most other states.
Wow.
Wyoming has been just very antagonistic toward anyone who might invade the monopoly of the education industrial establishment.
Wow.
And so thankfully that has opened up an opportunity. Now it's only 3 schools to begin with, but we're hoping that over time, as those 3 schools blossom, that people will see, well, wait a second, just leaving it to an education industrial monopoly, which is the public school system, we don't have to do that. There are education options, and parents should have those options.
Okay, so back up just a second.
Yeah.
There are 3 different charter schools being proposed. Is that what you're saying?
Not yet, but the legislation authorizes up to 3.
Oh, I gotcha.
Right.
Per year or total?
No, total right now in the legislation.
Interesting.
And
Okay.
so it's 3 openings,
I
but
see.
that hopefully will open up to many more.
We talked about this. Our school here has really grown. In fact, next year I think we're opening up 4th grade.
Yes.
And it's because of the parents.
Right.
And there's a waiting list for the preschool, and there's actually people kind of pounding on the door. You're going to do 5th and 6th grade, so
Right.
there's that kind of interest.
Right.
And I hope that even by allowing other options, people get this idea that wow, these options are there for us.
Right.
And then ultimately we can't utilize the school district's funds for a Christian school.
Right.
I realize that. But you said that one time that there was this idea of you didn't call it a voucher, but that's what it in effect it is. Do you have any idea where that's where that is at?
So we're going to have to wait until hopefully the House Education Committee is reshuffled and we get people who actually believe in education freedom. We have 2 really good ones on there.
So is
now.
that like next fall, next
Right,
November?
we'll have
Is
to
that
see
possible?
Yeah, it's possible after next November.
Oh, wow.
But one of the things that we're going to need is, and this is the great thing about charter schools, is we've watched this in many other states where when people realize, oh, there are alternatives, then they get excited about all the other alternatives as well.
Yes.
Because they can see that it works.
Right.
And so I've
Kind of
already...
all boats rise in the harbor. Yeah, for
When
sure.
I was down at David Barton's meeting in Texas a couple months ago, I had the opportunity to meet a man who years ago in Arizona started the tuition tax credit program.
Okay.
That works so effectively where basically the funding follows the child.
Yeah.
It does it outside of the education funding model. So you get a tuition tax credit. They've done the same thing now in Florida.
Wow.
And because it's outside of the education funding model, it doesn't fall under the Blaine Amendment problem that we've talked about in the past on this program. And so it gives us more options to help lots of different education options for parents to help their children get the best education they can.
Well, we need that. I think to have the funding follow the student. I think it's like, I'm going to throw out numbers that are in my head and you can correct them, but I think about $17,000 per student goes with that
On a
student.
statewide average.
On a
right.
statewide average, okay. And that's Wyoming statewide, or is that?
Wyoming statewide. So
Okay.
in this particular county, Laramie County, because of just the population base here, I think it's closer to 14,000. But on the statewide average,
Okay.
it's much higher.
Well, let's use 15. That'll be
Yeah.
nice and easy.
Yeah.
But I know that it takes, in order to have a school or be able to have the facility that you necessary to do school, on a bigger scale, it would take at least $10,000 per
Right.
student.
That's right.
Now, our students that come to the Christian school here, they're paying $4,500 per year.
Right.
And I don't think, I may be wrong, but I don't think the market would allow much more,
right.
after you bump that up anymore. That's not enough to build buildings, and that's not enough to even pay the teachers what they, what a teacher's paid in the school district. These teachers are sacrificially,
Right.
really being here because they love teaching and they love students,
Right.
and they love the Lord, and that's why they're teaching. And but that's why this needs to change, and I don't know. Someday down the road, we need to talk about how can we. What is the legislative process, and who needs to be voted in and out to
Right.
to get this thing through, because it got shot down bad last time.
It did. They didn't even really give it. They haven't given several of them. I won't say this about the Senate. All but one of the Senate Education Committee are pretty keen on education options.
Okay.
But it's only two members of the House Education Committee that are keen on it, and they're really good guys. A guy named Ocean Andrew from Laramie and Chip Nyman from up in Hewlett have been just the picture of what a statesman looks like on this issue.
Okay, that's good to know.
But just last night, didn't talk about this. Just last night, I was with a board from a different community in Wyoming, as they're trying to reconstitute the Christian school that closed there, and it closed because at the end it boils down to funding.
Yeah, it's funding. Yeah.
So there's a
doubt.
lot of people with a deep desire, but when we look at the funding issues, it's the same thing you talked about here. I was talking to a private school here in Cheyenne, a very famous one, very old one. It's been around for a long time. They mentioned they cannot educate a child for less than about $9,400 and something dollars. They had it down to the penny.
Yeah.
And they mentioned, just like you, that they couldn't charge more than about $4,500.
Yeah. Yeah.
So they had to make it up through all these other
Fundraising,
means,
or
right?
yeah. There's just or the church kicks in. I'm sure maybe that in this
Right,
case, I'm not
and
sure.
that really puts pressure on
For
the
sure.
church.
Oh my gosh. So yeah, we need some help, and
Right.
I think what we can do on this program is just to expose say, hey, we need to have a vote on this person that will push this thing through, because
Right.
otherwise we're not going to have
Yeah.
a Christian school option. Now the charter school option is a fantastic option,
Right.
and that looks really good.
Right, it
Courtney,
does.
you want to go back to any of
Yeah,
that and
so-
where we're at, because that's pretty exciting.
So it'll take the opening of Cheyenne Classical Academy.
Okay.
What we're looking at is August of 2023. Of course, there's a lot more steps involved in getting a charter school going. Eventually, it will be a K through 12 school.
Okay,
But
like day one, or do you
no.
grow into it?
We'll have to grow into it, and that's
Okay.
partly because we really want to be very thoughtful about the people we hire and all of those different
Sure,
things.
absolutely.
And just like it just takes a lot of careful preparation to do things right. But that's the ultimate goal, and that will allow a lot of other schools. We found in some research that it's now 36 schools. It was 38 a year and a half ago. 36 private schools across the state of Wyoming. Only 4 of them at the time had a junior high or high school.
Yeah.
And so there's basically no alternative past a certain point for people to get an education.
And it's just the facility. I mean, for a
Yeah.
junior high school student, you need, band and vocal and art and,
Right.
athletics.
Or labs
and,
for science.
Yeah, exactly. It's just a whole different deal. And, by faith, we hope and pray that God will open up these doors, and
Right.
vouchers is the only one that I can see.
Right.
Maybe God's got another plan, but
Right.
I'm amazed. We started with 3-year-olds as a
Mm-hmm.
preschool, then with 3s and 4s, and then everybody wanted us to go to 5-year-olds, and then kindergarten, 5s in kindergarten the next year, and then last year was 1st and 2nd, and then I think we got up to 3rd grade.
Right.
So it's just been amazing. It's like God keeps opening these doors
Right.
up, and I guarantee you, we're just kind of along for the ride and kind of look and scratch our heads and go, "Wow, these are a big operation.
You know, that's so exciting. It also highlights an issue, in a wonderful way. There is this deep desire as people are watching the system, the education system, begin to teach things as Paul wrote to Timothy. He phrased it this way, as in the old language, he phrased it, oppositions of science falsely so called. Things that operate opposite the sensus communis, as Aristotle called it, the common sense, or I'm sorry, Cicero called it, the common sense of truth.
Yeah.
People get frustrated when their kids come home. I had this, Galen, there was a lady that sent me a text the other day on my Facebook page, and on it, she showed me the video. She sent me the video that her little boy, about a 6-year-old, he came home and he put his hands together and bowed very deeply and said, "Namaste." And so as they're looking at this video, it literally is Hinduism.
Yeah.
And they're teaching it as meditation.
Yeah.
Well, parents see those things and they're thinking, I need an alternative.
Yeah.
And that's why they're flocking to the school here, which is just thrills my heart.
So did we
Yeah.
have this conversation?
I don't know.
This gal called me.
Oh, did she?
She called me and told me this story.
Oh,
And that's why I'm sitting there going, I can't remember what we
Yeah.
talked about. No, and she called me and she told me the story, and she just said she wanted to know more about our school
Right.
and all those things. And
this is in Laramie County School
I
District
know.
number 1
Well,
in an elementary school.
she
here.
moved from another state, hoping to get away from some
Right.
of the crazy that they were dealing with.
Right.
And she goes, "Here we are." And she's appalled. She's a wonderful. I mean, I didn't met her, but it's just a wonderful sounding Christian lady. She doesn't have an axe to grind. She just loves her kids and loves the
Right.
Lord and wants the best for her kids.
Right.
Just a salt of the earth person.
Right.
And so it was a really cool conversation. And I said, "Well, yeah, here's what we're doing, and come check it out and all that stuff." So
Yeah.
I don't know if she ever did or if she's going to, but that
I know
conversation
this.
it's got her attention for sure.
Well, and I want to make sure the whole world knows that story.
Yeah.
Because it highlights the reason why so many people are leaving the public education system. Because for years, I was talking to a phenomenal educator that's been teaching for over 50 years. And he talked about how in the 1960s and 70s, what happened was there was this effort to bring in, they cloaked it in the idea of trying to make sure that teachers were well trained. But what they began to do is essentially put all of these different kinds of credentials that you had to get to become a teacher. But to get those credentials, the people that were teaching certain things had a clear political motive that they were pushing.
Yep, that's right.
And so by targeting the teachers, eventually they get to the schools. And what happens is through the corruption of the entire system, you're left with no alternative. And Wyoming, sadly, is dead last in the nation in providing any alternative.
Yeah.
And so we've got to fix it. It's a real issue,
Yeah.
but we have some answers in front of us. And thankfully, we're going to take them.
Yeah, no kidding. No, that's
Yeah.
exciting. And, but that's the exciting part. The sad part for me is that's only a fraction. Even what we're talking about.
Right.
3 charter schools, a Christian school, and
Right.
there might be some other Christian schools that surface. I hope they do, but it's still a fraction. It's like there are so many. I know this is true. There are so many good, godly teachers in our.
That's
if
so
we
true.
could just unleash them
Yes.
to do what they do, it would just be amazing. But because of I don't know, this is something that I will never fully understand. You can teach Hinduism. That the gentleman that we had
Yes.
in here.
Yeah.
If you can think of his name, say his name. Jim.
I forget.
Yeah, I
Jim.
did too, Jim. And but he basically said, no, this if there's a Hindu student, this is how we relate to him. It's like, well, why can't we relate to the Christian students? Why can't we
Exactly.
have? If we're going to have Hinduism, let's put Christianity right beside it,
Please.
at least,
Yes.
and give the teachers an opportunity to say, here's. But here's what the thing is, though. This is I'm going to go global on you, but there is so much of this eclectic. All roads lead to God, and you can form God in any way you want. And this is that one world religion that's happening. And I've been reading a lot, and I don't want to go into all of it, but this is happening on a rapid pace.
True.
We are on a fast pace to say, Jesus and Buddha and Hindu and you name whatever else you want to throw in there. They're all, whatever you do is all equal.
Right.
And it doesn't matter. And it's like, I don't know. Jesus said he's King of all kings and Lord of all lords. And it's like, and every knee will bow and every tongue will confess in heaven, on earth, and under the earth.
Right.
And so I happen to be one of those that's going to say, so let's bow to him now.
Amen.
Let's put him up there.
So true.
I mean, someday everybody's going to be.
Yeah, and you've hit on the issue. It reminds me of a statement, and I've said it so many times, but I think it bears repeating over and over again. When truth compromises with error, it is always truth that loses.
Yeah.
Because error has nothing to give up in the first place.
Oh, that's so good.
When you think about
That's
it,
so true.
a lot of times the opposition to Christianity, and you especially see it today, it isn't necessarily another overt religion. It isn't Islam. You can see the clear differences between Islam and Christianity. It isn't outright animism, from the jungles or something like that. It isn't that. We can see the differences.
Okay.
What happens is the same error that was creeping into Corinth, where basically they would take a little bit of their pagan religion, they would kind of cover it with a little Christian facade. They would carry it in and say that, hey, this is the church. And nothing could be further from the truth. And Paul was very, very clear. That's the reason why the entire book of 1 Corinthians is essentially a spiritual spanking for the church at Corinth.
Yeah.
But we're facing the same thing. Today we call it secularism.
Yeah.
And we cover Christianity with this facade of certain things, or some people feel like they do.
Yeah.
And but I tell you, the Bible doesn't give us room for that.
I'm reading in Ecclesiastes right now. I wish I had my Bible in front of me. It's Ecclesiastes, I believe it was 10, and Solomon is talking about this, and he says 100% of. He has a very poetic way of saying it, but basically what he's saying is this: 100% of the women that are from another religion will correct. They will direct your heart in a different direction.
Oh yes,
100% of them.
Yes.
I mean, he said, "Now, I've seen 1 in 1,000 men that could toe the line and be transformed into a God-fearing person."
right.
But he said 100% of the women would take your heart and take it into a different direction.
Right.
And it's just interesting to me to hear Solomon says, "You guys, you can't go mix your." In this case, he was talking about marrying, a pagan person. That's what he was talking about, because he married many of them.
Right.
He knew.
He became the archetype of the very era you're talking
Yes,
about.
he
I just
knew
had to answer this, by the way, on an ethics exam that I just took.
Did you get it right?
I think so. I haven't got the report back yet. But you're right. He becomes the exact example of it, because it says later on that they led his heart away from God.
Yes.
And literally, he began to worship Ashtoreth and the gods of Molech and other things.
And he knew this is not right, and he just found himself into this. I'm sure it was a gradual inch by inch, and falling into this whole thing. It's like, okay, this won't hurt too much. I give up, and finally there's nothing left. And he says, I've not seen any that I can from a foreign religion that you can compromise with.
And that's the point. It wasn't based on race. It was based on religion.
It's exactly right.
And it's clear both in the book of Numbers and Deuteronomy, and then again in his own example. And apparently from what you've just brought out, I've never thought of this before. He walked into this eyes wide open. Because he was so wise, he knew what was happening, and even then couldn't resist it.
Yeah. Well, that's it. And that's the great deceiver. I think the deception is so, I don't think we have a clue how skillful our deceiver Satan is. Right. He's a master craftsman of deception and manipulation, or whatever it is. But and I think Solomon is admitting, I've fallen into this very thing, and you guys just stay away from this other religion.
Well said.
Well, we need to wrap this one up. We kind of hit our time limit here, but thank you for being here. It's good to have you back.
Oh, it's good to be here, brother.
Well, and like always, I don't care what year it's in. I think it's relevant to be strong and very courageous. God bless you all.